Hello there. Welcome to Today in History for the 9th of August. My name is Sotonye Afiesimama. Let's get cracking. The year is 48 BC and encounter these people here. They're Julius Caesar's men. So it's called the Battle of Pharsalus, and Julius Caesar decisively defeated Pompey on this day at Pharsalus. Pompey flees to Egypt, obviously flees for his life. So we move on to the year 1483, and this famous chapel, possibly the most famous chapel in the world, the Sistine Chapel, was opened. It's located in the Vatican, in Vatican City, Rome. So that's the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. It's paintings on the ceiling. Okay, let's move on to the year 1898. So on this day, a man called Rudolf Diesel, a German, he obtains patent number 608845 for his internal combustion engine, later known as the diesel engine. So this is a man, the brains behind the diesel engine. His name again is Rudolf Diesel. We move on to the year 1942. Mahatma Gandhi and 50 others were arrested on this day in Bombay after passing of a Quit India motion and campaign by the All India Congress. So that's a rarely seen photograph of Mahatma Gandhi in his younger days. He eventually became a passive resistor, so he wasn't someone who, at least in his latter years, didn't want to cause any trouble. If he didn't agree with something, he resisted passively. So non-violent protests, was what he became known for. You can just see from this picture, he comes across as a man of peace and a very humble man. So, and this is a famous quote of his: "Be the change you want to see in the world." A lot of people complain about the government doing this and that. The government's not living up to the task. The government's not keeping the promise, or the president who has now been sworn in, who was promising heaven and earth, now cannot deliver. It happens all the time, all over the world. But, change starts with us. Change starts with each one of us. If we want to see change in our country, we need to be that change. Because imagine that we needed something done in the country and everyone turns their face in the opposite direction, decides to do nothing. Now contrast that with 80% of the inhabitants of the country saying, okay, this is what we want to do, and 80% are pulling in the right direction. In no time, whatever they decide is going to happen, will happen. It's just common sense. So I totally agree with Mahatma Gandhi, who says, be the change you want to see in the world. It's so true. There's no point criticizing others if we're not prepared to be that change that we want to see. So we criticize, but we go behind the scenes and do probably even worse than the people who we're criticizing. So, let's bear that in mind today. If we want to change our world, we need to be that change. Change has to start with us. Okay. Let's move on to the year 1945. So 3 years later, the United States drops the second atomic bomb in Nagasaki, Japan, destroying parts of the city. So yeah, there were 2 bombs dropped in Japan. I did mention that 2 days ago, I think, the dropping of the bomb on Hiroshima. So this was a decisive bomb, the one that ended the Second World War, essentially with the defeat of Japan. But war isn't a good thing, but it's, I suppose, sometimes it's necessary. Sometimes it's necessary to use force to achieve the change that we want to see. Okay, so let's move on to the year 1963. It's a bit of a sad story, but we'll share it anyway. This beautiful lady, Whitney Houston, she was born on this day, the 9th of August, the year 1963. She is one of the most awarded and best-selling female music artists ever. She first came to prominence as a teen model and moved into music full-time after she signed a record contract in 1983. Her debut album, Whitney Houston, so the debut album was basically eponymous as her name, was released in 1985, and in 1986 was the #1 selling album. Her second album, Whitney, was also a major success with a record 7 #1 hits. Wow. She moved into film roles with The Bodyguard in 1992, beautiful film. The film's soundtrack containing her so-called signature song, I Will Always Love You. So that's Whitney Houston, who sadly died about 10 years ago. You all know the story. If you don't, Google it up. But yeah, she was a lady with an amazing voice, amazing talent. Let's move on to 1965. On this day, Singapore, pictured here. Hope you can see a tiny Singapore on the map. So that's Singapore over there, and that's Malaysia. So Singapore separates from the Federation of Malaysia and gains its independence. So I'm going to show you some pictures of the beautiful country of Singapore. Show you what it looks like. So that's their flag, and that's the city of Singapore with the iconic architecture of Singapore. That's a map, obviously. A flag again. Move on to Malaysia now. Both very modern countries today. Obviously, those towers or those buildings are called the Petronas Towers. At one point in time, they were the tallest buildings in the world. I think they're second or third now, overtaken by the Burj Al Khalifa in the United Arab Emirates. So we move on to 1974. So that's last but not least. On this day in the United States of America, we had a big scandal which led to the resignation of Richard Nixon. The Vice President, Gerald Ford, was sworn in as the 38th President of the United States. He resigned the presidency of the United States as a result of his involvement in a scandal called the Watergate scandal. And he remains the only president ever to resign the office. Wow. So that's him on this day. This was him actually giving his resignation speech. So 1974 was the year, and that's a newspaper clip in the New York Times, also letting the world know that President Nixon had resigned. He urges a time of healing in quote, Ford will take office today. So Vice President Gerald Ford was sworn in as the 38th President of the United States, the same day that Richard Nixon resigned. Thanks for watching, guys. Do not forget to like, share, subscribe, click the notification bell so that you receive updates of my video uploads. That's if you like this video. Thanks again, guys, for hanging out with me. I shall see you tomorrow, 10th of August, for another edition of Today in History. Bye-bye.